Huh?
You are sitting in a meeting. You slept 8 hours last night. You are not bored, not tired, not sleepy in any way you can name. Then the person across the table opens their mouth in a long, slow yawn. 3 seconds later, without deciding to, you do the exact same thing. Your jaw stretches, your eyes water, your body performs an action you never chose. Why did that happen? You were not tired. That is the part that does not add up. If yawning were only about oxygen or exhaustion, your body had no reason to do what it just did. Something else pulled the trigger. Something older than tiredness, older than boredom, older than the meeting itself. Most people assume yawning spreads because it is contagious the way a cold is contagious. A kind of biological accident, a glitch that happens to ride along with tiredness. That assumption is almost right and almost completely wrong at the same time. Yawning is contagious, but it has very little to do with sleep and almost nothing to do with oxygen. For a long time, scientists genuinely believed low oxygen levels caused yawning, the idea being that a yawn drags in extra air when your blood needs it. It sounds reasonable. It also turned out to be false. Later experiments had people breathe pure oxygen and extra carbon dioxide, and yawning rates barely changed either way. The oxygen explanation collapsed. Something else was clearly driving the behavior, and it had nothing to do with your lungs. Picture an early human group resting near a fire, thousands of years before meetings existed. One person yawns. Within a minute, 3 others yawn too. A modern observer might call this a coincidence. An early anthropologist would call it something closer to a signal passing quietly between bodies. Researchers who study contagious yawning noticed something strange decades ago. Psychologist Robert Provine, one of the first scientists to seriously study yawning in a lab, found that people did not need to see a full yawn to catch one. Reading the word yawn was enough. Hearing someone describe a yawn was enough. Even thinking about yawning for a few seconds could trigger the exact same muscular reflex. That detail changes everything. If yawning only spread through direct physical contact, you could explain it as sensory mimicry, similar to flinching when someone else gets hurt. But a written word triggering a jaw movement suggests something happening much deeper than imitation. Your brain is not just copying a mouth shape, it is responding to an idea. Here's where the story gets stranger. Contagious yawning does not spread evenly through a room. Provine's early studies suggested people were far more likely to catch a yawn from someone they knew well than from a total stranger sitting nearby. A friend's yawn spreads faster than a stranger's yawn on the same street, in the same room, under the same lighting. That pattern should not exist if yawning were simply a random reflex. Reflexes do not usually care who triggered them. So a new question forms. Why would evolution build a behavior that responds more strongly to people you are emotionally close to and barely responds to people you have never met? To answer that, you have to go back further than any modern office. Long before humans built shelters, groups slept together in the open, vulnerable to predators, temperature changes, and simple exhaustion. A group that fell asleep and woke up in sync had an advantage a scattered group did not. If one member of the group needed to signal drowsiness and the rest of the group picked up on it quickly, the whole group could prepare for rest or alertness at roughly the same time instead of drifting apart into separate rhythms. A yawn in that world was not a private moment. It was information passed without a single sound. It told the group something about the state of one member's brain, and by extension, something about the readiness of the entire group. This is where the story takes its first real twist. Contagious yawning appears to be closely tied to empathy, not exhaustion at all. In a well-known study, researcher Atsushi Senju examined yawning in children with autism spectrum disorder and found they were significantly less likely to catch a yawn from another person compared to neurotypical children, even though they yawned on their own just as often when they were genuinely tired. The reflex to yawn was intact. The contagious response to someone else's yawn was not. That single finding reframes the entire mystery. Contagious yawning is not really about sleepiness spreading from person to person like a scent moving through a room. It is about social connection. Your brain catches a yawn the same way it catches an emotional cue, by unconsciously modeling what another person is experiencing and mirroring it back through your own body. But animals complicate the picture in a way researchers did not expect. Yawn contagion is not limited to humans. Chimpanzees catch yawns from other chimpanzees they are close with far more than from strangers in a different group. In studies involving researcher Elaine Madsen, even domestic dogs were shown to catch yawns from humans, especially familiar humans, at a noticeably higher rate than from strangers standing in the same room. A dog watching its owner across a kitchen will sometimes yawn seconds after the owner does, its head tilted, eyes half closed, mirroring a stranger's biology by accident of companionship alone. That detail should stop you for a moment. Dogs did not evolve alongside humans in order to feel empathy toward office meetings. They evolved alongside humans as social partners, reading facial expression, tone, and posture to predict what a trusted companion was about to do next. If a dog can catch a yawn from a person it trusts, contagious yawning starts to look less like a strange side effect of tiredness and more like an ancient, cross-species signal of social bonding, one old enough to survive the leap between two entirely different nervous systems. Long before any of this could be tested in a lab, it was already happening inside the womb. Ultrasound recordings have shown fetuses yawning weeks before birth, long before there is any sleep debt to repay or any oxygen shortage to correct. A yawn, it turns out, is one of the earliest coordinated movements the human brain ever practices, wired in before a single social interaction has taken place. That timing matters. It suggests the basic yawn reflex is ancient scaffolding, present from the very beginning, and the contagious version of it was built on top later, once a developing brain had other people to respond to. Newborns yawn constantly in the first months of life, but they do not catch yawns from the people around them. That ability arrives gradually, usually strengthening through early childhood, right alongside a child's growing capacity to read faces, predict intentions, and sense what another person is feeling before being told. Contagious yawning, in other words, seems to grow at the same pace as empathy itself, almost like two branches of the same root pushing upward together. Neuroscientists have looked for the machinery behind this using brain imaging, and one of the regions that lights up during contagious yawning sits close to networks involved in understanding other people's mental states, sometimes described loosely as the brain's social mirroring system. The details of that system are still debated, and no single brain region fully explains the behavior. But the general pattern holds steady across study after study. Watching another person yawn does not just activate the muscles of your own jaw, it activates circuitry connected to imagining what is happening inside someone else's head. Here's the part almost nobody expects walking into this topic. The closer socially you are to someone, the more likely you are to yawn when they yawn. Family members catch yawns from each other more than acquaintances do. Acquaintances catch yawns from each other more than strangers do. Some researchers have proposed a kind of gradient where the strength of contagious yawning tracks the strength of a social bond. Almost like a built-in test of closeness, your brain runs constantly without ever asking your permission, which raises an uncomfortable question. If your body yawns more around people you feel connected to, what does it mean on the rare occasion you do not yawn at all around someone you love? There is no single confirmed answer to that, and it would be dishonest to pretend there is. The pattern is consistent enough that some scientists treat contagious yawning as a rough, imperfect window into unconscious empathy. One small behavioral clue among many, not a diagnostic tool, and certainly not a verdict on any individual relationship. A missed yawn on a tired afternoon means very little on its own. Step back into the ancient scene by the fire again. A yawn ripples through the group, moving from one face to the next like a slow wave. It is not a random accident. It is closer to a heartbeat passing between bodies, a signal that says, without a single word being spoken, I am tuned into you, whether either person realizes it or not. Groups that synchronize this way may have coordinated rest more efficiently, stayed more alert to shared threats during vulnerable hours, and reinforced the invisible bonds holding a small band of survivors together through a cold night. Fast forward to the meeting room, fluorescent lights humming overhead. The moment you catch someone else's yawn, your brain is not malfunctioning. It is running one of the oldest social programs it owns, the exact same program that once helped small bands of humans stay emotionally synchronized long before language existed in anything resembling its modern form. There is a strange irony hiding inside all of this. Humans spend enormous energy trying to hide yawns in public, covering their mouths, apologizing for them, treating them as rude interruptions to be smothered as quickly as possible. Yet the very same reflex your culture teaches you to suppress is one of the clearest, oldest signs that your brain is quietly connected to the people around you. You are hiding a compliment your own body is paying to the room. This also explains something oddly funny about modern life. Video calls, phone screens, and even written sentences can trigger a yawn, exactly as Provine's early research suggested decades before smartphones existed. Somewhere, right now, someone reading this sentence is fighting off a yawn triggered by nothing more than a description of yawning itself. Proof that the reflex still answers to an idea rather than a body in the room. Think about where contagious yawning shows up most in modern life, and the ancient pattern becomes almost impossible to miss. Sports teams huddled before a game sometimes yawn in a chain down the bench. coaches included, moments before an event that has nothing to do with sleepiness at all. Choirs and orchestras report the same ripple backstage before a performance. Soldiers waiting before a mission have described the same thing. None of these moments involve exhaustion. All of them involve a group of people locked into the same emotional state, bodies quietly synchronizing before something important happens, the same way a resting band of early humans might have synchronized before a long, watchful night. Notice something else worth sitting with. This reflex almost never asks for consent. You cannot decide in the moment to block it through sheer willpower once the trigger has already landed. A yawn slips past the part of your brain that plans and negotiates and lands directly in the older, faster machinery beneath it, the same machinery responsible for flinching, for laughing along with a room, for feeling your own chest tighten when someone else starts crying nearby. So return to that meeting. The version of you sitting there, confused about why your jaw stretched open seconds after a coworker's did, was not exhibiting a flaw or a weakness of discipline. That reaction was your nervous system doing exactly what it evolved to do around people who feel familiar, or people your brain is quietly, automatically trying to feel familiar with, even in a fluorescent room that shares almost nothing with the world where the behavior first appeared. Which brings the story back to where it started, and reframes it completely. You assumed a yawn was simply contagious the way sleepiness is contagious, spreading because everyone in the room happened to share the same low-grade exhaustion on a long afternoon. The truth is almost the opposite. You were not tired at all. Your body was not responding to a lack of sleep. It was responding to another person, quietly measuring closeness, running a program built long before meetings, long before language, long before fire ever lit a human face at night. The next time you catch someone else's yawn, you are not catching their tiredness. You are catching a small, ancient signal that your brain still recognizes even now as connection.
See you next time!